Well, well, well. God, I'm so bad at this. Hello. Thank you for being here. I guess I should probably preface the video just by thanking you guys all so much for the super positive, like overwhelmingly positive feedback on my Euphoria video. That means a whole lot to me just because I was so excited to make that video and I put so much effort in. So to see that people could recognize that and responded to that makes me feel really good. So I hope that you guys enjoy my other content as well, though there will be more video essays. I'm writing more. But in the meantime, I'm also watching a movie a day. So this is my February, and it's not February anymore, so I'm a little late, sorry, but let's just get right into it. So if you haven't seen my previous video, I did January already, you could check it out right here, but I have a few ground rules that I just want to specify off the bat. I will kind of go into spoiler territory on some of these movies whenever I see it kind of necessary, and every movie will be on a title card, so you can skip if you haven't seen a movie and don't want to be spoiled. You can just skip to the next one. Cool. So February is a short month. It was also kind of a busy month, and I went a little behind. So that's okay. Let's get it going. Okay, so the first movie that I saw was Malcolm and Marie. If you're coming from my Euphoria video, you'll know that I talked about this movie a little bit in that video. Didn't really speak much on my own personal thoughts, just about the critical reviews surrounding the film when it came out. So in short, I don't really know how to feel about it. I went back and forth a lot on whether or not it was a really annoying and aggravating film, or if it was perfectly written to represent annoying and aggravating characters. I was going back and forth on whether or not that was successful or sort of just an oversight of making these people deeper and more convincing and having that history of their love and their relationship while still having that all kind of fall apart in front of us. I thought in the end that the writing was pretty convincing in terms of the argument. I think arguments are really hard to write. However, I think it was hitting the same note over and over again for the rest of the life of the film. So all through the runtime, you're sort of, as one of the reviews said, you're circling the same drain over and over again. You're not learning more about the characters, you're not learning more about the way that all of this is going to impact their relationship later on. I would say Zendaya's performance kind of got on my nerves independently from the character. I think she was in this like stoic, grumpy territory that I didn't really vibe with. It didn't feel super right. And it doesn't really feel like Zendaya, to be honest with you. So it felt like acting to me. It seems like Sam Levinson only wrote it to kind of ramp on a negative review that he received for his previous feature film. To try and open up an argument between two characters is pretty ballsy, and it's really exposed writing that's challenging to do. So I admire the effort, but I think it could have really worked as a short film, honestly. You would follow the characters through the house, and they would make up, and then they'd walk into other rooms, and then the fight would begin again, and it was kind of just, it was a little too much, a little bit of an eye roll. I ended up giving this one 3 stars flat. Up next, I saw But I'm a Cheerleader. I saw this again, this is a rewatch, and I started thinking about it after seeing the Miseducation of Cameron Post in my previous month's roundup video, and obviously they share a lot of similarities. But I'm a Cheerleader is sort of the campy, fun, comedic version of the same story of a girl who's gay going to gay conversion therapy. The Miseducation of Cameron Post is pretty great. This one is perfect. And obviously it's comedic, it has a completely different tone, but it's just the perfect iteration of a campy movie. It's over the top in every way while still remaining close to its purpose and not straying too far. You know, this movie has all of the fun stuff, like it's got great performances, it's really silly, it has RuPaul in it trying to play a straight man, it's genius, it's colorful, but camp needs to have a little more to say, and this does. I totally love this one. I give this one 4.5 stars. Up next, I saw Diary of a Teenage Girl. I was so surprised by this one. I think I was just on HBO Max and saw the cover, and I was like, cool, 70s movie about young girl coming of age, let's go. and I was so pleasantly surprised by this. I remember seeing bits and pieces of this when I was in college because a professor of mine was friends with the woman that did all the animated sequences, and I have a pet peeve with unnecessary animation in live action movies. I don't always love how animation is kind of treated as like goofy, imaginative thing where it's always representing a child or fiction in a at least interesting possible way. But I thought these animated sequences were so nice. Obviously they tied in really well because our main character wants to be a cartoonist. I wasn't expecting anything of this movie, but I especially wasn't expecting the way that I felt about the whole thing. You know, you start and it's a young 15-year-old girl who wants to have sex with her mom's boyfriend, basically, because she's coming of age and she wants to sort of be promiscuous in that way. And I wasn't expecting this to be such a wonderful representation of young women realizing the way the world sees them and the way that men use them. At the end of this movie, when her desires are finally requited by the man, she realizes that she has no more interest in the situation because she was only interested in the taboo and the thing that she wasn't supposed to be doing. And all through the movie, there's just bits and pieces of victim blaming and, you know, all sorts of things. I guess it's easy for me to tell that this was directed by a woman as well. There's just an honesty to it that is hard to describe, but a super pleasant surprise. I would absolutely recommend this one. And it's also set in the 70s and it has a really beautiful production design edge to it without it feeling costumey. Oh, and a lot of great jeans. Every character's wearing good jeans. I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I saw Raya and the Last Dragon. I watched this to research for my next video essay about facial animation, and I didn't expect anything great out of this. I thought it was pretty predictable, canned. It's kind of rare at this time for me to be really pleasantly surprised by like a Pixar animated feature just because they are so, from the beginning, you can expect exactly where they're gonna go. In the beginning, they give you this introductory expositionary dialogue about the history of whatever story they're trying to tell, and then you know that it's going to hit those points. So this is unfortunately no exception. I really liked the staging of the animation, actually. Like, there's a lot of cool choreographed fight scenes that are really convincing and interesting to look at, but the facial animation bothered me. I'll explain in my next video. I thought the dragon's design was really unfortunate. It was giving My Little Pony vibes, and just that typical kind of childish sidekick character archetype, but in the body of a dragon that's lived millions of years is sort of an eye roll to me. One thing I want to point out, though, that I noticed when watching the movie is I wasn't sure if the vocal performances were recorded during COVID lockdown. I'm assuming not, because this came out in 2021, so I would assume that the audio would have been recorded sometime in 2019. The voices of all the characters were void of all setting in place. They felt very dry, and there was no post-processing on them to kind of indicate that they were in a cave, maybe a little bit of echo or anything. I actually was super distracted by that, even though it's a really small detail, but it kept going back to it. Speaking of formulaic animation, I saw Toy Story 4 and I fucking loved it. I know. I avoided Toy Story 4 for so long because I thought I would hate it. And here's why. I didn't like Toy Story 3. I saw it in theaters with my family and I thought it was a total tearjerker, like really tugging at the heartstrings, and it didn't work on me. And I thought it didn't have much else other than, isn't this so sad? These characters are growing up, and da-da-da-da-da. So I haven't revisited that one since I saw it for the first time in 2010. It's been many years since. So I avoided this movie. My sister loved it. She told me I should see it, and then I think a few coworkers at work were like, you have to see it. One of my classmates from CalArts posted on Letterboxd a pretty great review, but one piece of the review stuck out to me because they said, Toy Story has always had this kind of inexplicable and unexplainable edge to it, which I thought was so interesting because it does. There is an edginess to those characters, and I really can't place it. I would be way interested into like really researching this and figuring out why I think that is. But it was overwhelmingly lovely. I really wasn't expecting such a genuine story with characters that feel so fleshed out still after having so many stories, 4 movies, 4 feature films, and a million short films. And these characters still feel grounded. They still feel like there's a lot that we can learn about them. The character arc with Bo Peep and learning about her life now was so good, and it felt legitimate. It didn't feel like people were pushing that character into that hole because it was a character that they hadn't utilized in a few years. And it's like, oh, time to figure out what happened to Bo Peep. Really great. It was a total success. Yeah, I couldn't get over how much I loved this. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. Up next, I saw The King of Staten Island. This is that Judd Apatow, Pete Davidson movie that kind of fell under the radar from what I understand. I think this came out during COVID, so it wasn't in theaters or anything. It wasn't great. I was expecting garbage, and it wasn't garbage. There were a lot of really sweet moments in this, kind of endearing character moments that I was surprised by, and that's sort of where it ends. It's considerably too long. Far too long. This could have been totally fine as an 1.5 hour film, and I think it would have hit just the same, but it gets really wandering in the second half, and you're not learning a lot about the characters. It's a very simple story of just like this kid. He's not even a kid. He's like in his 20s, and he feels like he's kind of a loser, and he hasn't really worked through the trauma of his father dying. But in the latter half, when things start coming up to the surface, we're sort of in these long montages of him learning about his father that we have passed the point where this is advancing the story, and now we're just riffing. I don't think Pete Davidson's all that funny, but he had some good moments in this. I guess like the way that I would surmise this is that it was okay, I guess. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Then I saw Jackass Forever. So there's a theater really close to us in Portland that had Lance Bangs, the cinematographer for all the Jackass stuff, there in the beginning of the movie to talk and do a little thing, and then at the end he did questions. That was a really nice surprise, and that was the first like theater event that I've been to in many years. Since COVID, obviously, but I think even before that. And it was so nice. I'm a longtime fan of the Jackass franchise, and I really do think that this movie is their best. It really holds true to what makes Jackass great. It's not mean-spirited. You can tell that all these people care about each other. They all like to laugh. And I just think it's important to say that Danger Aaron, who's taken kind of a backseat of most of the Jackass features, really came to play this movie. Far more, I think he did more stunts in this movie than he did altogether in any other. I think I've read a few reviews of this kind of around the internet, and I think the consensus is that Jackass Forever is sort of the thing that people need to see right now, just because it's stupid butt and dick humor, and it's just for laughs. And obviously the world fucking blows donkey dick right now, and it's nice to laugh at something that doesn't feel charged by anything. Like, it's just pure fun. I'm really happy I got to see it in theaters, because I think Jackass is designed to be seen with friends and with a large group of people, because we're all just ewing and awing and like, it was great. If you haven't seen this yet, I would try and see it in a theater. Bring some friends over, have a couple beers. It's worth it. I gave it 5 stars. Then I saw Mars Attacks. Where to begin with Mars Attacks? Okay, so I haven't seen this. I remember having the DVD when I was growing up. I just never saw it. I'm a huge Tim Burton fan, and this was, I think, the only feature of his that I hadn't seen. It's not worth it. It's really irredeemable for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, I feel like I have to say that this was supposed to be stop motion instead of CG, and this came out in '96, so it's sort of at the cusp of when CG was coming up and the next big thing, and it actually turned out that they did tests. So they hired a team to make puppets of all of the aliens and do animation tests, and then they also hired a team to do some CG tests, and they ended up going with CG. I think because it was cheaper, which is shocking to me because it was right at the beginning of all that stuff. I'm sure those computers were outrageously expensive. But I think they were just excited to kind of like do the new thing and get in on this new trend. And I shudder to imagine how much better this movie would have been in stop motion, but at the same time, the bones of this movie aren't very good, so I don't know how much would have been salvaged. I think this movie's premise is faulted right from the start. If you're going to have aliens come down to Earth and have this miscommunication thing going on with the humans versus the aliens, and then keep these aliens in a position where they can't be reasoned with or spoken to, then there's there's really no conflict, right? Like, you're kind of just like watching a bunch of humans be laser zapped in really bad CG, and it doesn't really change for the entire runtime. Who knew that 106 minutes could feel so long? I think I fell asleep, actually, because it was just the same thing over and over again, and I didn't find it very funny either. This is a bummer. This is a little bit of a dark stain on Tim Burton's career. I wish this was like more fun, like more campy, colorful fun, and it's just kind of a trudge to get through. I gave it 2 stars. Then I saw Kill Bill Volume 2. I saw Volume 1 for the first time last month. Now I saw Kill Bill 2. What a great part 2, man. I mean, I can't believe that I hadn't seen these movies up until this point, because obviously they're cornerstones of cinema. People talk about them all the time, about how perfect they are, and it's amazing to me that not only did I not understand how perfect they were all through the amount of times that people told me how perfect they are, but they weren't spoiled for me. I don't know, like, it was so great. I loved how fun the first one was, but the second one was really grounded in emotion. I really just don't have enough good things to say about it. The scene with Daryl Hannah's character in the trailer is like the best cinematic fight I think I've ever seen. It was such a blast, but it's sung because it was bumpered by this really moving story about our bride and her finally getting to the end and meeting her daughter really for the first time. It was just amazing. Like, there were so many amazing parts of this. The ending is incredible. I've never seen a happier ending in a movie ever. This goes without saying, but if you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It's so thrilling that movies this good exist. I gave it 5 stars, obviously. I think my boyfriend asked me if I liked part 1 or part 2 better, and in the moment, I think I said part 1, absolutely, part 1 for sure. And now I'm looking back on it. It's been a month and a half since I saw it. I really don't think one is better without the other, you know? Like, I think they work so well together as a whole film. Who needs favorites, you know what I mean? Up next I saw, this is kind of random, I saw the FYRE documentary about the FYRE Festival. This is a rewatch. I don't know why I watched this. I actually really like this documentary, and I don't think anything about the actual documentary is done in a super excellent way, but just the story of FYRE Festival is so insane, and I like the way that the story is told through these people in the documentary. Just the insanity. You really feel like you're there. It's iconic. And I've also seen the Hulu documentary, and I can say certainly that this one is better. The way that they tell that story is better. There's far more stock footage in the other one, and a lot more, like, sympathy towards Billy McFarland, which is like, okay, why? I don't feel bad for you. You're a crook. If you know nothing about the FYRE Festival, this is a pretty great documentary that goes pretty in-depth, but it's really nothing special about the filmmaking or directing or anything like that. But I gave this one 4 stars because it's always a fun watch. It's just chaos. There's just so much crazy shit going on. Then I saw Spencer. This is sort of the beginning of my entrance into the Oscars 2022 Best Picture list. I'm still making my way through it, but this was the start where I was like, okay, everything's getting onto streaming sites now. Let's give it a whirl. So I saw this the day that Kristen Stewart was announced to be the Best Actress nominee from this movie. I'm gonna get hate for this. I don't care what anybody says. Kristen Stewart is not good. She's not good. I've seen her in a lot of shit. I saw her in the Twilight movies. I saw her in Personal Shopper. I saw her in that Runaways movie. And I saw her in this. That's a lot of times. I never saw her in The Clouds of Sils Maria, or whatever that's called, because she won a French Academy Award for that. She's not redefining herself in any way that I think deserves credit. I really do think she's playing the same person that she's played always. And sure, the directing of Twilight was probably way worse than the directing in this, but it's just so acty to me. Horrible accent that she's doing this entire movie, sneezing out lines, is so distracting and unfortunate from a pretty interesting film. I think it's beautiful looking. I love the way it's shot. It kind of reminds me of like Yorgos Lanthimos in a lot of ways, where you got these really ultra wides and these beautiful green pastures. The costumes were divine. I mean, just so beautiful. A lot of reproduction, which is lovely. I always like reproduction, historical garments. I thought the chemistry between Diana and her family was really legitimate to me, her children, and obviously the lack of chemistry between her and Charles. That was legitimate, but I do feel like most of that was in the writing for me. And I thought the kids were great. So the kids were kind of behaving like I would imagine them to if they loved their mother. But Kristen Stewart, man, I am not jiving with her performance, and I do not think that she deserves the Academy Award this year. We will get there. We will get there to who deserves it. I will get there in a moment. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I know I really riffed on how bad I thought Kristen Stewart was in it, but I thought the movie was excellent. And there were so many good things in that movie. I liked how it kind of went psychological in the end and kind of thrillerish. Out of all the great things in this movie, the worst thing is the main actress, which is unfortunate. So maybe I should bump it down to a 4, but I would recommend it nonetheless. Up next, I saw The Hangover for the first time. The Hangover, yeah. Okay, well, they can't all be winners, right? No matter what, I think this is a really fun watch. I think a lot of these jokes are pretty good still. It's fun. There's nothing more to it. It was a Friday night, we were having beers, and I wanted something stupid to watch, and I'd never seen it before. I think the actor that plays the guy that goes missing, whatever his name is, I don't even remember, he's in National Treasure. That guy needs to keep his mouth closed. His acting, like, fingerprint is he's always like that. He goes like, it's really distracting for me. It's really annoying. You know, a little eye-rolly about the Asian character at the end just being a joke because he's Asian, kind of weak sauce, but very dated, of course. This came out in 2009. I'm sure everyone has seen this already. I gave it 3 stars. Next, I saw Palm Springs, which was a recommendation from a coworker at work. I was so into this. I'm sad that I didn't see it earlier. This came out in 2020, and I think it was just always on Hulu for the amount of time that it's been out. I knew nothing about the movie going in. I think the thing that people kept telling me was, it's really cute. It's really cute. To surmise it, I mean, it is a perfectly airtight Groundhog Day film. My boyfriend and I watched this together, and at the end, we were like, wait a minute, but what about this? But what about that? There's all these unanswered questions. And then we talked through it, and we were like, oh, no, wait, do you remember that scene? Do you remember that scene? And we put everything together. Every question is answered. It is so perfectly encapsulated as its own story. And I think these characters are great. I love the performances. It's funny without being jokey joke, because obviously if one character has been going through this Groundhog Day for much longer than the other character, there's going to be this kind of like, yes, let me take you under my wing kind of attitude, while still being sort of jaded about the desire to leave this pattern because there's just no way to do it. It's not as much of a bummer as it could be. Like, there's really a lot of jovial energy to it, and they have so much chemistry together. I really like this. I would absolutely recommend it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Okay, so let's rewind it back to when I was talking about how Kristen Stewart doesn't deserve the Best Actress Oscar. Who does? Jessica Chastain in The Eyes of Tammy Faye. That's fucking right. I saw The Eyes of Tammy Faye, and this movie's not that good, but Jessica Chastain fucking killed it. She was so good. I knew the name Jessica Chastain, but I'd never seen, I think she's in Mad Max. No, Mad Men. She's in Mad Men? No, that's not her. Oh, she's in Interstellar. So I know the name Jessica Chastain, but I'd never seen her in anything. She transformed. I didn't even recognize her because I know her face. She transformed into Tammy Faye. I don't know about Andrew Garfield. I could see Andrew Garfield through the neck fat mask, but Jessica Chastain had like a perfect accent, a perfect demeanor. She just like completely turned into Tammy Faye. It was incredible. I thought about this movie for a little bit and was thinking like how I would make it better, just because I thought generally it wasn't that great. I don't know, it's hard. It's hard to do nonfiction of a person's life because it's a life, you know? Like, it has ups and downs. I guess the short answer is I don't really know. But I do think that the performances really carried this. And it's, you know, it's sad. Like just the whole story of Tammy Faye is really kind of unfortunate. I wouldn't necessarily watch this if it wasn't for the Oscars encouraging me to watch it, but I'm glad I did because that's a great performance. And to put that next to Kristen Stewart is like offensive to me. So I give this one 3.5 stars. Up next, I saw 88 Miles Per Hour, the story of the DeLorean time machine. I came home from work and my boyfriend was watching this on YouTube, out of all places, and I was like, okay, sat down and watched it, and I ended up rewatching it because I missed the beginning. This is pretty interesting. In the beginning, it like is way more technical about the actual car and the fabrication of the car and the rights to the car. But later on, this like group of fabricator nerds was like, where's the original car? Oh my god, it's just like boiling in the sun at the Universal Studios lot on the tour, and it's a mess. We need to rebuild this for the Peterson Automotive Museum. and then they redo it. It's a little hollow overall as a documentary because you don't see a lot of the process here. It's a lot of talking heads in chairs being like, it was really hard to put this together again. These birds are going crazy. I just wish we saw more of like the actual process of putting it all together and like seeing the people butt heads, but this was all retroactive, so there's no video, there's a few pictures, so it's kind of hollow, but also it's just a YouTube documentary, so I wasn't expecting great things, but if you care, I gave it 2.5 stars. But at the end of that, I looked over to Oliver and I was like, you know, I had never seen Back to the Future. So we put on Back to the Future. What a fun time, man. I can't believe this is another one of those movies where it's like, I can't believe I went my whole life without seeing this. I thought it was so much fun. And it was also one of those movies where you're watching it and you're like, oh, that's that reference. That's that reference. Oh, like, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, that's, like, it's like all of those references from 4 decades or so of cinema pulling from it. Is pretty fun. It's pretty fun to watch it for the first time and put all those puzzle pieces together. But it's just a classic. There's really nothing else you can say about it. I thought it was total fun. I had a blast. I gave it 4 stars. Up next on our Oscar train, I saw Nightmare Alley. I wasn't really expecting anything of this because I'm not a huge Guillermo del Toro fan. So I thought I really wouldn't like this, but I gave it a whirl anyway. I thought Bradley Cooper was excellent, and I'm really happy that he was our main character and we got to follow him all the way through this because he carried the movie. But there were great performances alongside him, supporting him. Toni Collette, I love her. Rooney Mara just kind of played Rooney Mara, whatever, just like meek girl, pretty girl character. And I always like a circus. Like, I think that kind of premise is really interesting. But the thing with this movie, it's 2.5 hours and you watch him start at the circus and then realize that he has this gift for mentalism and moving forward to start his own act and get away from the circus. So you're spanning a lot of time and you're going to a lot of different places and you're watching him reinvent himself and then kind of fall apart because he's taking it too seriously and he thinks that he's actually magic. But I found that this was kind of like, it was doing a lot of telling, not showing for me. And for the movie to be as long as it is, I wish that there was more like character backlash between Bradley Cooper and the other characters as he's going down this path of obvious destruction, and none of the characters around him being like, you're scaring me, Brad, you're doing a thing that you shouldn't be doing. There wasn't enough of that for me to feel the tension of like Rooney Mara wanting to leave. You know, it's all like really specific details in the movie, but I think we were sort of watching Bradley Cooper go through this journey and there wasn't a lot of direct conflict with him and making these choices against the interest of himself or against the interest of other characters. He was sort of doing his own thing, and then when it all came crashing down, then it ends. And the end is great. I thought the ending was really good. But, yeah, I mean, it's 2.5 hours and we're not, like, feeling that tension. The production design was beautiful. I know Guillermo del Toro is sort of notorious for being a little bit of a money pit, but you can see the money in this. Like, there's all of this practical build for the circus, and he's like walking through the scary tunnel, and all this stuff is moving, and it's all designed, you know, no detail left unturned. So it's a treat for the eyes, but I had my problems with it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Oscars number 4. I saw Being the Ricardos, and this was a bummer. I love Aaron Sorkin. I'm a huge Aaron Sorkin fan. I can't say enough good things about him. He needs to stay out of the director's chair. This was the weirdest movie ever. This is about Lucille Ball during, I suppose, one of the hardest weeks of her life, where there was all this speculation in the news that she was actually a communist before her episode was going to come out for the week for I Love Lucy. And during this week, she realizes that her husband is cheating on her. Pretty dramatic week. This movie was directed in such an odd way because it was bouncing back and forth between like a fictionalized version of Lucy and Desi going through and writing the episode for the week and all of the characters, and then the real life people that those characters are based on doing talking head interviews about that time and about that week, and then bouncing back and forth. And it wasn't bouncing enough for it to be like, yeah, this is like a non-fiction film with cutaways. It was like, this is a fictionalized version of this thing, and then there are these interspersed interviews that come in out of nowhere. And to be honest, these interviews didn't really add anything because a lot of the time they have clashing information because there's like 6 different people, and they don't remember because it was so long ago. So there's a lot of, I don't really remember what I said. I don't really remember what happened, which is useless. That's useless information. You don't need to put that in the movie. Nicole Kidman plays Lucille Ball in this, which is weird. Apparently Aaron Sorkin and Nicole Kidman work together a lot, from what I heard. He's sort of inspired by her and likes to put her in everything. She did not do a good Lucille Ball. Obviously, this is a stressful week. It's been known that Lucille Ball wasn't a very fun person. She was kind of harsh, especially when she was at work. But it's still a movie about a comedy show. And you're still, like, the funniest woman in America at that time. So I wish there was, like, a little bit of, like, levity and fun. Not fun, you know, it's a drama, but she's still writing and she's still trying to be funny. And there's this, she's on, you know, she's having all this drama at home, and then she goes into the writer's room and then she's like, oh, this is so funny. Like, this is why I do this. I'm saving the show. And there's none of that. Like, she's just like kind of a bitch, which was a bummer. I would have liked to see that distinction of her being like the character and the woman. I gave this 2 stars. Oscar number 5, I saw CODA on Apple TV+. This is the movie about a deaf family and the daughter being the only hearing person in the family wanting to sing. This couldn't get more Hallmark movie if it tried, but why do I like it? I was completely charmed by this. I thought this was so sweet. It was precious and lovely without being too saccharine. Like, it didn't feel like, ugh, oh brother. But it didn't surprise me in any way. Like, you know, you've got all the tropes, or you've got the family that's just like, I don't understand your dreams. And then the daughter being like, I want to do my dreams. And then the angry brother being like, why don't you care about your family? And then the inspiring teacher being like, you should care about going to school. It's got all the tropes, but I thought it was delightful. And on a visual note, you know, it's super great to watch deaf actors perform, because there's a full body cohesion with what they're saying and what they're doing, and it's really interesting and fun to watch. It's a very emotional performance of all the characters, and I do feel like there's a very legitimate familial chemistry between all the characters as well. But this movie has nothing new to say, really. It's very plain Jane, but it was very nice. If you want a feel-good movie, I would watch it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Oscars number 6, I saw King Richard. Wow, I was super impressed by this one, actually. I wasn't jazzed to see it, especially because it was so hard to find. You have to buy it for $20. Oh my god. I thought Will Smith was really good in this. I've heard conflicting reviews from people that I trust where they say that Will Smith really feels like he's acting the whole time. Like, it's like, I'm acting now. This is my acting voice. I disagree with that. Again, speaking of familial chemistry, all of those daughters felt like sisters to me. Like, they really all communicated in a way that felt so natural, which was lovely. I thought this movie was so great. Like, just, I mean, what an incredible true story. I mean, I don't even know what to say about it, just how incredible it is that this father knew from the jump, like, this is exactly what's gonna happen. I'm gonna make sure of it. He makes this plan for Venus and Serena Williams to become stars of tennis. And it's like 78 pages, handwritten notes of exactly how they're gonna get there. And almost everything he ever wrote in that plan ended up coming true, which is insane. So we follow him through that journey, and the daughters through that journey as well. Even with the knowledge as a viewer of being like, well, I know Venus and Serena become famous. I know this. There's no worry in my mind that they're not going to make it. It has a way of building tension that is like leaving you on the edge of your seat, like, oh my god, is she gonna lose? Oh my god, what's gonna happen? Oh my god, this is so stressful. This is a long one for sure, but it didn't bore me. The one note though, I thought the music, the score was so overbearing at times. Yeah, talking about Hallmark movie. Very Hallmark. Very like, this is a soaring inspirational piece now. We're just gonna stick it right here. And it's like, oh god, okay. It took my attention away a lot of the time when it was present, which is unfortunate. But I gave it 4.5 stars. I really liked it. Then I rewatched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Johnny Depp 2005 version, for no reason at all, only just because I wanted to watch it. It's not very good, but it's super nostalgic. When I was growing up, my sister was a huge Johnny Depp fan, and I think she saw it in theaters 7 times, if I remember correctly. And we had the soundtrack of the movie in my mom's car for years. So I still know all the songs by heart, but this one's fun. I mean, it's a little bit of a comfort movie, although it's losing its charm for me as I grow older. Like, I go back to it less and less. But the costumes are great. What would you call that? Like, the visual chemistry between, like, parent and kid, like how they look like they're a part of a family, was insanely perfect. Like, the casting was so good to make these look like they were actually families in real life, which I enjoyed. You know, what can I say? A lot about family in this one. I'm sure you've seen it before. It's just a nostalgic pick that I wanted to rewatch. 3 stars. Speaking of a nostalgic pick that I wanted to rewatch, I also saw The Social Network for like the 50th time. Again, I love Aaron Sorkin. This movie is like music to me. I am pretty sure I can recite this script by heart. There are so many pieces of this that I know the rhythm to perfectly, where I can just sort of start spitting it out. I mean, I am desperate to have David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin work together again, because that unity is so perfect. It's like my dream pair, my dream team. For anyone that hasn't seen this yet, I mean, it is perfect in so many ways. I think the drama is there. The performances are there. The script is amazing. Like, I just love the way Aaron Sorkin writes, where everybody's kind of talking over each other and finishing each other's sentences, keeping the pace really quick and giving information at like a rapid pace. It's almost hard to keep up at times, but it's just excellent. The music is amazing. Really great working music, where if I need to like sit at my, or stand at my stand-up desk and do work like a hacker, gotta put that soundtrack on. There aren't enough good things I can say about this. I'm actually curious to read the book that it was based on, The Accidental Billionaires, just because I'm sure that they had to make the actual lawsuit a little more succinct in order to give space for the interpersonal drama between the characters. I've seen it a million times. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. 5 stars, obviously. Oscar pick number 7, The Power of the Dog. I loved this one. I was so surprised by how much I loved it. Spoiler alert, this is my pick for Best Picture. I love a Western meets art film. Like, I appreciate the character study hidden within this Western. It looks beautiful. This was shot in New Zealand, but it's set in Montana. It's spectacularly gorgeous. I think all of the performances are really great. I'm not a huge Benedict Cumberbatch person. I think he's kind of strange. But the ego in this character and all of the deep-rooted issues that he has works, and I think Benedict Cumberbatch plays it really, really well. Just being so cruel, but still having a little seed of human in his head where you can feel it as a viewer of it kind of, he's starting to peel out of that and become an actual person. I don't want to spoil this one, so I won't. I gave it 5 stars. Next, I saw The Power of the Dog again. That's right. I saw it twice, back to back. I think it's important to note that I missed some things, and it was deserving of a rewatch for sure. By the end of the movie, the first viewing, I understood the story that was being told, but I was like, oh, okay, that kind of came out of left field, I suppose. So when I watched it again, I was like, oh, no, okay. This is laid out from the beginning. So if you like it, I would suggest a rewatch, because there are some things that you may have missed. I also saw the behind the scenes on Netflix with Jane Campion. Really great. I didn't rate that, but I also saw that. So just a little, like, I think it's like 20 minutes behind the scenes of her talking about directing. So I liked it. Then I saw When a Stranger Calls for the first time. we were going through Netflix trying to find something to watch in the evening with some drinks and food. And I saw that, and Oliver's like, what is that? And all I said was, the call's coming from inside the house. And he's like, oh, turn it on right now. So stupid, but house porn. I mean, that house is beautiful. I would rewatch that house tour over and over and over again. Yeah, this is so dumb. I mean, it's like totally nostalgic for that time period, like down to the outfits and to the way that the teenagers talk to each other. There's not much to say about it. It's silly. It's a lot of like plot convenience after plot convenience, obviously, because it's a 2000s horror made for teenagers. So what else are you gonna expect? But I had fun watching it. I gave it 3 stars. Then I saw Assassination Nation. This was also for my Euphoria video. Sam Levinson directed this one as well. I liked this one. I think it has a lot of the charm that Euphoria has, where it's like young people who don't absolutely irritate you. Like there's a youthfulness to the way that they speak that feels legitimate but annoying in the right way, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, you are a stupid teenager. But it doesn't feel canned or forced, or it doesn't even feel like a 45-year-old man trying to write teenagers. I don't know how old Sam Levinson is. I don't know if he's 45. But yeah, he really knows how to write a teenager that doesn't want to make me blow my brains out. But I think in the Euphoria video, I touch on this a little bit, where it feigns attention given to this larger social dilemma of the way women are viewed and commodified in like a technological age of society, but it's all just kind of lost in the film. Like, it's just so showy and aesthetically pleasing, and the performances are like silly, and then they kind of like screech to a halt to make this big feminist speech, and then they continue on, and then they stop again and make a big speech. So it's a little bit like ham-fisted and shoehorned in there, which makes me roll my eyes. But I thought it was okay, and I thought it was really nice to look at. I gave it 3 stars. Next, I rewatched National Treasure. A lot of rewatches this month. I was cross-stitching for an art show at work, so I needed to use my eyes down here, which is why I had a lot of rewatches, because I was watching, but I didn't need to pay full attention. National Treasure, man, what a great movie. I hadn't seen this until I started dating my boyfriend, and when I was asking him about his favorite movies, he was like, oh, Pulp Fiction, Super Troopers, no, I'm not gonna say it. I was like, what is it? It was National Treasure. So I ended up watching it for the first time because I wanted to know why he liked it so much. And I love this movie. It's stupid, it's Nick Cage at its best, but it's still like people solving puzzles, and that's so much fun. There are movies like The Da Vinci Code, which I haven't seen all the way through. I got bored, I think I fell asleep, that don't work as well as National Treasure because they take themselves a little too seriously. Nick Cage in this movie, bro, living in Portland, everybody's always screaming. It's fucking crazy. I think Nick Cage's character in National Treasure takes puzzles and riddles seriously, but there's a lot of seeds in the movie where he stops and kind of relishes in the joy that he's experiencing as he's treasure hunting, unfurling the Declaration of Independence near the middle point of the movie with his team and kind of stopping in reverence and going, the last time that this document was here, it was being signed, and kind of smiling. And it's like cool because you as a viewer are like, hey, you know what? That is pretty fucking cool. Yeah, it's corny as fuck, but it is so fun. And I love this movie a lot. I gave it 4 stars. And finally, I saw seasons 1 and 2 and the 2 specials of Euphoria, again, because I was researching for my video essay. So that's like a combined like 20 hours of content, and not to mention all the interviews and all the reading. So those aren't movies, but I'm adding them here too. But that's it. It's a short month. I mean, it's just February. That's all we got. We got 28 days. So yeah, not bad. And this is my graph for all the movies I've seen so far, which is exciting. Again, can't thank you guys enough for being here. Thank you so much for sharing all your movies with me. Already halfway through March. Today is March 12th, so I'm super excited for all of the other movies I have to talk about next month. Feel free to leave all your favorite movies in the comments. Give me as many recommendations as you can because I have a lot of movies to watch. Okay, I guess that's it. Goodbye!